this video, we get to start working on rebuilding the front axle for this project to be able to fit the bigger 32-inch tires, as well as upgrading the drive system on this project. Now, unlike how we did it for the rear, where we basically just heavily modified the rear axle to get all the new components to fit on there, I think for this one, because this one's going to be very complicated, I think let's just build a whole new axle from scratch. Because we'd probably have to modify pretty much almost everything on this axle to get the new setup to work. I think it's just going to be a lot easier just to start from scratch. So, but we do have to make sure that certain things are in the same spot, like the bump stops, the steering input, drive input, as well as all the mounts for the four-link. So, unfortunately, due to my poor pre-planning with this front axle, I'm kind of having to figure out how to build this thing like right now, which means I've had to buy a couple parts. And unfortunately, I kind of need those parts like right now to be able to build this thing, but hopefully they get here soon. Now, my original idea was going to be building custom spindles, because when you're building something custom, it's kind of just a little easier just to build everything custom, so therefore I can just make everything how I want to make it versus having to use half pre-made parts, custom parts, and then you're having to kind of work around the pre-made parts. Also, these spindles use ball joints. I honestly kind of don't like ball joints because not only are they not adjustable, they're just a little finicky to work with, and they're a little bit challenging to add to tubing. Heim joints are just, in my opinion, just a little easier, a little bit better, and like I said, they're adjustable. So if you don't get the camber or caster perfect, you can adjust it, but with ball joints, you cannot adjust it. And ball joints are single shear, Heim joints are double shear, so in my opinion, Heim joints are just better and stronger. But I kind of think it would save us probably 2 or 3 days of work if we just use the spindles that we already have and not make custom spindles. But I unfortunately only have 2 ball joints. I need 4 of them, obviously, so I had to buy more. Hopefully they get here in time, because I kind of definitely need them to be able to build this axle. So hopefully I'll try to my best to build this thing now with the 2 ball joints that I have, and hopefully the ones I bought will get here soon, so therefore I can build the rest of this thing. Also, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing for steering. My original plan was going to be using the original rack and pinion, but it kind of has a lot of play, and it's a little bound up for some reason. So, but I do have this. It is off a golf cart, but I kind of like this because it has an insane amount of travel, and one issue that we've had with this project is a really bad turning radius. So therefore, if we use this, we can have a lot sharper of a turning radius, which will definitely help. So I'm thinking of using this and just hoping that it is strong enough. Also, I had to buy some steering U-joints because this spline is a little bit weird and I can't really figure out what it is, and all the steering U-joints I have do not fit this. So I had to buy a bunch and just hope that they fit, because I have no idea what the size is. Also, I'm having to figure out where am I putting power steering. Part of me kind of thinks I should put it on the axle itself. Another part of me is like, it'll be a lot easier just to put it in the frame, but then there's going to be a lot of play and, you know, going through a bunch of steering U-joints. I don't know, I get a little nervous when there's a bunch of steering U-joints between the power steering and the rack and pinion, because then that just kind of to me just feels like I'm just going to break something. So, but we'll talk about that later. So I guess right now, let's just start working on replacing the bearings in these the spindles. I forgot what were called for a second. Let's replace the bearings in these, because these are shot, and I guess let's just start mucking this thing up and just start building. Well, unfortunately, I thought I bought the right size bearings, but apparently not so. These are just a little bit too big to fit in here, so I went back on eBay and bought the right size bearings. This time I found a listing that actually gives me dimensions, therefore I can verify that they are the right size, and yeah, this time I know I bought the right size. So for now, I'll just use the old bearings. Alright, so from hub to hub, it is 55 3/4.
Okay, hold on, real too fast.
Look at that. That is almost perfect. Now, I know I don't use this machine as often as I should. This thing kind of just sits here most of the time, but I'm not really cutting out complicated shapes like this that often. But when I do need to cut something out like this arc droid is insanely nice to have. Now, if you guys are interested in this machine, I'll have links in the description below. Definitely go check it out. So actually, this is my very first time ever using ball joints, and honestly, I kind of don't like these. I don't like ball joints already, simply because these pieces of plates took me over 3 hours to make, and with Heim joints, especially when you're using tubing already, simply just take a Heim joint, take a piece of tubing, boom, done, drill a couple holes, weld it, it's adjustable, it's replaceable, it's, in my opinion, stronger. So yeah, I'm still not sold on ball joints, but I don't know. I do see some advantages as far as infinite turning radius, where with these, you know, you have to mount them horizontally to get a really good turning radius. If you mount them vertically, it is technically stronger, but then you're really limited with steering. You're unlimited with travel, but you're limited with steering. This way, you're unlimited with steering, but you are limited with travel. But if you angle it correctly, you can get a still decent amount of suspension travel, especially with high misalignment spacers. But I'm not saying these are faulty, it's just they're a little bit harder to use when building, you know, stuff from scratch. Alright, now I gotta realign everything, because I moved it. Now, something I was noticing on the original front axle, on this very bottom front bar, there's a lot of pretty big dings in it from when I smashed it up against a bunch of rocks. So for this one, I decided to have this front bottom bar a lot thicker of material, because normally I use this stuff. This is pretty thin wall tubing, but this is almost 1/8 of an inch thick, so it's a lot thicker material, so hopefully it'll survive a lot better bashing up against a bunch of rocks. Now, next thing is let's start working on figuring out where this differential needs to go and getting that mounted, and let's start working on the bottom mounts for the 4-link. We're still waiting on those other ball joints, so therefore we can continue working on the top portion of this whole thing. So hopefully those get here soon. But let's get the differential mounted and possibly even start working on figuring out where the rack and pinion needs to go. Alright, so perfect timing. The ball joints that I ordered for this thing finally got here in the mail this morning. So let's hope that they fit. They definitely look like the right size. Nice. So, alright, now we can start working on the top bars. Also, I need to remember to clock the spindles back about 10 degrees to have proper steering and everything. So, I did have to make it to where the top ball joint is removable, so therefore we can, get the spindles off, because on the original setup for the Razor, the top and bottom A-arms can be separated. Therefore, you can get the ball joints off. But on this, it's all one big piece of live axle. So therefore, I had to make it to where the top ball joint can be bolted off and removed. So therefore, we can get the spindles off of this setup. So now let's clock these 10 degrees this way, and then we can figure out the top bar and figure out how high it needs to be. Alright, so I was going to have this piece of tubing going across here, connecting these two, and then just do cross bracing, but I decided against that. Instead, what I want to do is have tubing going from here down to here, and from here down to here, and then I'll have this piece of tubing connecting to those. Not only will that be stronger, I think it'll look better. Alright, so we'll put the caliper on just to make sure that this thing can still steer and not, hit anything. This way is pretty much unlimited. This way, the caliper does hit this tubing, which I kind of had a feeling it would. But I mean, this it's turning pretty sharply. I almost want to say that's good enough. If we do need a little bit more, I can always shave off a little bit of the caliper right here, and maybe a little bit off the tubing right there, just to get a little bit more if we need it. But I mean, I'd say that's pretty good. Yeah, this should hopefully make it to where this thing has a really nice tight turning radius, which definitely helps off-road. Now, this is totally unintentional, but it ended up being the perfect length between this hub and the differential right here to where we actually don't need, to lengthen or shorten the CV axle on this side, which is actually perfect. It's awesome. We finally don't have to modify something for once, so yeah, look at that. That actually lines up perfectly, but we're definitely gonna have to shorten the CV axle on this side, which is not the end of the world. I've done it how many times? So we got a pretty good amount of work done on the front axle. We got all the complicated stuff done, which is trying to figure out where most of the stuff needs to go and figuring out dimensions and angles and all that kind of stuff. Now, like I said in the beginning, we do need to figure out how we are doing power steering on this thing. I'm not going to say it's impossible to get the this power steering column mounted in the frame, but I'm almost wondering, because there is the way that the steering is on this thing, there are 6 steering U-joints between the steering wheel and the rack and pinion, and due to all that, just kind of adds up to a bunch of play. And I kind of feel like if I put a power steering unit in between the first 2 steering U-joints, it's just going to make it to where the steering still has a bunch of play, but now it's powered, and I don't know. So I'm almost wondering, would it be easier and better to heavily modify this thing, shorten the crap out of it, and somehow get this thing to fit on the axle itself, connected directly to the rack and pinion? But I'm kind of looking at it. I'm not going to say that's impossible. It's just, it would be a lot of work. It would be a lot of modification, and be a little challenging to try and get this thing to fit on this axle, next to this differential, next to the rack and pinion on here. But I'm almost wondering, would that be better, because it would be directly connected to and only be going through one steering U-joint. So I don't know. So I may try and see if I can, get this power steering unit to fit on the axle itself, or worst case, we can just, fit it on the frame. Now, this is actually the power steering unit off of the mini trophy truck project. It was slightly underpowered for that thing, but that thing was that thing was way heavier than this project. It has the same size tires, but the rack and pinion on this is geared a little bit lower, so therefore this thing should have plenty of power. Now, next video of this project, we get to hopefully finish this thing. There's not really that much stuff we need to do. We need to, like I said, figure out where the power steering is going to go, rack and pinion is going to go. We need to add the shock mounts, the bump stop mounts, the other mounts for the forward-link suspension, finish the frame, tubing, and cross bracing, all that kind of stuff, and then disassemble it, weld it all together, weld the CV axle, and then this thing's pretty much done. And we can install it on this thing and finally see what this thing looks like with all the, 4 32-inch tires on this thing. But anyway, guys, this is it for this video. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see ya in the next video.